Hello and welcome to Don't Bury the Lead. We review WWE Smackdown every Friday night after the bell. Today we have a special episode. We're doing the WWE Smackdown review on Saturday instead. My name is John Zindel. I'm joined by Dom Scarcella. Dom, go ahead and tell the people about yourself.
John, I had a night to sleep on the results of last night's SmackDown for June 23rd, 2023 here, and I think I'm ready to talk about this show. I will say it seemed to be better than the previous week's show. So with that little nugget there, John, don't bury the lead. What's our top story from this most recent episode of WWE SmackDown?
Dom, we don't ever bury the lead. We don't bury the lead here at Don't Bury the Lead.
There you go.
We have the main event. Sola Sikoa goes over Sheamus in a pretty good main event wrestling match.
Until
well, of course, it is a SmackDown, so it's all Bloodline all the time. And we have some schmoz at the end here, but yeah, I thought this was actually a pretty damn good main event with Solo Sikoa and Sheamus. Dom, what did you think of this main event?
they gave them a lot of time for this.
Yeah.
Solo's entrance began. We're here on the East Coast, so SmackDown runs 8 to 10 p.m. Solo's entrance begins at 9:33. They go to commercial. Sheamus's entrance begins right around 9:40, and in under a minute, they're hitting the bell. So about 9:40, 9:41 at the latest, they got the bell. That's given them a long time for this match. And so when that happened, I thought, okay, so even if this does become a schmoz, it looks like they're going to give these guys enough time to put on a pretty good wrestling match. And I was pleasantly surprised by what they were able to do. I mean, it was a slugfest immediately, but they worked a pretty good, stiff-looking wrestling match. I don't really like how the show went off the air, though. This match goes. It was either a no contest or a count out here.
Yeah.
Out on the floor, Solo Sikoa cannonballed Sheamus through the ringside barricade, and then Solo Sikoa kind of got up after a few moments. Sheamus never did. The ref called for the bell. We never got a clear picture of whether it was a count out or a no contest or whatever. But that's kind of when the schmoziness happened. But up to that point, pretty good match. Do you want to go into what happened after that point, or do you want to talk more about what they were doing to get us to that point?
Honestly, if we're talking about the lead here, it's probably the stuff after the bell.
Right.
And I really like the match, but they did a good job weaving the storyline into there. And maybe I'll just touch on this too. The finish was lousy.
Okay.
It was a good match.
It was.
And they were going somewhere with it, and you could see that it was a hard-hitting match. And during the match, even Sheamus I could see him tell Solo, like, lay it in a little bit more with the strikes, and he started to really lay it in. So it was like a hard-hitting strike fest. But eventually, at the end, I just wish you'd get like a 10 count instead of the ref calls the bell.
Okay.
Because the ref never calls it ever. And now, like, abruptly, the ref is forced to. No, that never happens. It's a made-up rule. The ref never calls it. So why not just have him go? Like, it's for some reason trying to make Sheamus look stronger. But, like, Solo's the guy. I don't know why Sheamus has to look strong. But anyway, so Sheamus gets when Solo does that specific style of ending, I wish he would have done at least a sleazy heel thing, which is to roll in the ring, get the 10 count, and get the win. And then you're like, okay, well, then there's some sort of, there's some sort of there's some sort of like concept there where like, okay, he got the 10 count, he's still a scumbag, but this is what the actual rules are. So it's one of my like little beefs here with it. But
I'm
maybe
with you. I like that. I like that idea. That is a better heel move.
yeah. And let's talk about this too. So after the bell here, what did you think about the whole interaction between the Usos and Solo Sikoa?
I thought it was confusing based on where the story is supposedly going. The Usos' music hits as Solo continues attacking Sheamus post match. And now Solo gets into the, he now turns his attention to his older twin brothers running, not really running, but making their way out to the ring.
Yeah.
Now it's a 2-on-1. The Usos leave Solo lying in the ring after 4 super kicks, including the double super kick there, the tandem super kick to drop him. Solo makes his way up. They pound him again. They do their double top turnbuckle splash onto him as the show goes off the air. And I'm sitting there thinking, that's a heel move. Like, is Solo the baby face here all of a sudden? The guy who's outnumbered? Like, they're interfering in his match, outnumbering him and leaving him lying there? That's not what I would have expected. Like, I would have expected if you wanted to throw Jimmy and Jay in there, maybe they'd come down and prevent Solo from doing this earlier, but not, wind up for a good 2-3 minutes there, just double teaming Solo. That takes the heat off of Solo, doesn't it? I mean, if you didn't know who was supposed to be the babyface and who was supposed to be the heel here, you could have sworn at the end that Jimmy and Jay were the heels. I didn't think they looked like baby faces here. And I think they wound up making Solo Sikoa look not like a heel.
Yeah. I mean, they come down, right? Well, and this crazy thing is they've been a heel for 2 years. So then they're like doing the face turn and they're just being themselves. So they go down and they attack Solo Sikoa like, yeah, what's up? And they go run up on their brother. All things considered, yeah, they go run up on their brother for not following Roman Reigns rules. So, there is kind of a little bit of a gray area. But I feel like they're over, and it might be like Stone Cold Steve Austin when he was a huge baby face. You don't necessarily have to follow those rules anymore. Specifically, if you worked heel forever and everybody likes you and everybody's doing like this, then do your heel actions, man.
Yeah, but Stone Cold was always a loner, so there was in a sense where Stone Cold was always going to be somehow, if not the underdog, going against Vince McMahon and the corporation and whatever, then he was no worse than even footing with the other guy. The Usos just look like bullies here. Like 2-on-1. Like to me, it was just a bad look for trying to set up the heel face dynamics for the big, what they announced as the big Money in the Bank Bloodline Civil War tag team match with Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa versus Jimmy and Jay Uso. It looked like the reverse of what they should have been presenting heading into that. And especially with Roman not here, like everybody knew Roman was here, so they were just basically bullying Solo Sikoa. Like that should have been reversed. Like Solo and Roman are the bullies. You know what I mean? Like they're the bullies. Jay and Jimmy are supposed to be the guys who, have a little more loyalty, family loyalty. Especially with the promo they cut earlier in the show, where they said, "Look, Roman, we still love you, but you've been disrespecting us." So it's one of those it's like when you fight with your brother or whatever. You
or just a family member of any type, and you're still my family member.
Yes.
We'll get over it. We'll move on. But yeah,
it was just weird. I don't. You could see it coming from a mile away. The Usos are going to come out and get involved somehow. And of all the ways this could have gone, that you could have imagined it, I just thought this was a way that didn't build properly to the Money in the Bank match.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Dom. At least it wasn't like a long-winded promo at the end of the show. It wasn't like the last week's SmackDown. This is an improvement.
What did you like from the match? Because we both said that we enjoyed that they give them a lot of time to have a wrestling match, and that it was a pretty good wrestling match. You know, there were there any dives in this match? Anyone do a dive for no reason? I didn't see any dives.
I didn't see a lot of dives in the main event, which, that alone for me, if I'm Dave Meltzer, I give it 5 stars if I see 0 dives. Yeah. So I got some news for you. I really like Solo Sikoa. He looks great. He tossed around a jobber before the match. He looks like a badass. And even in like a Sheamus style brawling match, there's something about him. And I don't know how to describe it, but I'm like, dude, this guy's legit. And for him to kind of go from, we don't know if he can't talk, we don't know if he is going to like fit the role, he's just like another Samoan guy. But like with him and Heyman in the main event, I was like, I could see this at WrestleMania. I could see this at a SummerSlam main event. Like, sure. Solo Sikoa is a promising young talent they have.
Any sequences from the match stand out to you?
Well, specifically, I will tell you what I do like. So every time they go to the commercial break tonight, I've noticed, or last night rather, they do like an outside bump. So it's always a dive commercial. So we got to go outside and then we have to go to commercial. Yep. I don't know why they do that, but that's what they do. But he did a Samoan drop onto the outside and went to the commercial. It looks a million times better than any dive looks.
Absolutely.
Because he's Sheamus is facing the hard camera, side of the ring, making his way up, and he just dumps him onto the back, from his back, shoulders, onto the floor. And it's like, damn, that looks way better than a dive.
Yes. So, and it's the kind of thing that a big man would do.
Yes. And there are 2 big men in there, Yep.
I like a few sequences here just to go through them. Sheamus teases the 10 beats of the bow run early, but winds up not hitting it.
Yeah.
So when he does finally get it, when we come back from commercial break, the crowd is into it. Sheamus is doing it a little more slowly. They had Solo Sikoa kind of work over Sheamus's back early in the match. And Sheamus, to his credit, does the ring psychology so well. He sells his back the rest of the show. Like, really does sell it. It's not like, okay, that spot's over, now I'm fine again. Like, he sells his back the rest of the show. Let's see here. He tries for white noise, and he can't really get Solo Sikoa up at first. He winds up getting him up on sign of that second attempt, drops him, but he's a little slow to cover, only gets a 2 count. Then off of that, Sheamus tries the Celtic cross, but as he gets Solo all the way up, he can't quite hold him. Now his back gives out. He can't hold him in that full upright position there, and Solo's able to escape. That's where Solo kicks Sheamus in the back and then spikes him out of the ring. And then on the floor, that leads to Solo hitting the cannonball through the barricade. So that finishing long sequence there was Sheamus still selling his back, and that's the kind of thing that puts Solo over. Because now as you're watching, you're going, oh man, Solo really must have beat him up pretty good if Sheamus is still, feeling it in his back there.
Yeah.
You bury the other guy when he hits you with a huge impact move and you just like shake it off 30 seconds later.
And suddenly it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, like you're putting over your opponent a lot more if you sell that you're hurt. If you sell that, yeah, that guy really took a toll on me with what he was doing. And I think that's so important. Like Sheamus, he's clearly in there with a less seasoned wrestler. Solo made his debut roughly a year last summer.
No, he's not a
So
veteran by any stretch.
right, so for Sheamus, who's a long time ring veteran, to be working this kind of match with Solo and really putting him over, it, even though maybe no one technically won, but he put over Solo's power. He put over that Solo really beat him down and injured him during the match, and that he still felt it. And he put him over at the very end on the floor there. So good job by Sheamus. Solo looks strong. I don't think Sheamus looks weak. I
No,
think this was just
Solo's
a
the man.
good match. This was a good match. I just don't like the schmaz afterwards because I don't think it fit where they're supposed to be going with this. But good match, good physicality. There's my word. Like this was not aggressive parkour as some people call it, or just gymnastics. This was a slobberknocker.
Yeah, I heard and this might be a lead in before the next match I want to talk about here. But that's our main event. I'm pretty happy with it, especially compared to last week was brutal to watch. So to watch, just they gave you a 25-minute, 20-minute wrestling match. There's a little bit at the end that's storyline stuff related, and you could kind of nitpick it, but dude, Sheamus is a pretty big star. I can't believe I'm saying this, but like he's been a guy that's been around forever, and he's a veteran, and he's been pretty good so far in the role of, I don't want to say he's as good as Gunther has been for us, but like, oh, we want a good wrestling match. It's 20 minutes. He's the guy to put on that good 20-minute match.
But just quickly, he's here really legitimizing Solo Sikoa, just like he legitimized Gunther's Intercontinental title reign very early in it.
Yeah.
This was one of those SmackDown main events early in our viewership that we really liked, was Gunther versus Sheamus. So Sheamus has a way of putting over power guys because he himself is a power guy and he knows how to look strong even if he doesn't win. And in doing so, make the other guy look even stronger.
Oh, yeah. And
This is a good role for Sheamus, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, that is a short that take it to the bank. We are early cheap heat. That's a great short, Dom.
Okay.
But no.
Where did you want to go next? You teased us that you had another match you wanted to go to.
So we're talking about people. We're talking about like real wrestling matches and not gymnastics. And Wade Barrett said it on the call today during this match, talking about what LA Knight was talking about with an interview with the Daily Mail. He said, I'm like a big, strong wrestler. I don't do gymnastics. And let's talk about LA Knight versus Rey Mysterio Jr. in the opener. I think this was probably it. I mean, there's 3 good matches in the top of my head, and they're all at the same level where they weren't American classics, but they're good wrestling matches. And maybe LA Knight, Rey Mysterio is at the top of the list for me.
Yeah, I liked it too, especially since LA Knight is going to Money in the Bank. He's in that match, and he's had sort of this mini feud with Santos Escobar and by extension the LWO. Santos Escobar is also in the Money in the Bank match. So the previous week, Santos beats LA Knight with a neat, smart move there, preventing LA Knight from grabbing the ropes during the roll up. And then so this week it's Rey Mysterio versus LA Knight, and Rey puts over LA Knight, and Rey is that he has to do the quick, almost gymnastics looking stuff because he's 150 pounds or whatever, so he's got to do that.
Yeah.
But did he work well with LA Knight here? Who LA Knight is obviously not a luchador. He can get off his feet if he has to. He can use the ropes, the turnbuckles, but he's not a luchador. Did this match work for him?
I'll tell you why it worked for me.
Okay.
It did, and it wasn't the smoothest stuff in the planet. Like, you could see some of the transitions were a little sloppy between the two of them. But LA Knight needs a push. He's wrestling a pretty dependable wrestler in or a very dependable wrestler in Rey Mysterio Jr., and he wins clean. So you're like, wow. I can't
series of reversals and escapes with Rey trying to slither out of some of LA Knight's power moves there, but also not quite able to hit a big thing himself. And finally, LA Knight hits the blunt force trauma that combination snapmare bulldog of his. And yeah, you're right. He gets a clean finish. This match went about 9 minutes. I have here Bell at about 8:20, pinfall at about 8:29. So they gave them some time. There was one little commercial break in the middle of it, but neat stuff. Any spots stick out to you here, or just general that you want to talk about?
There is one thing that sticks out to me. I
Okay,
see a couple people here on Twitch and a couple people on Facebook watching. You
welcome.
know, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. Hit us up in the chat. Let us know what you think about anything we're saying. Even if it's like, oh, you need to cut your hair, or you need to wear a t-shirt instead of wearing nice jackets. Whatever that would be, come after us. But just go ahead, shoot us a chat, and let us and join in to the conversation here.
What
So
do you think of LA Knight and Rey Mysterio? Rey Mysterio, the hardest working member of the WWE Hall of Fame. Sat here every week.
That was my top comment about this. Rey Mysterio, the hardest working retired person ever. Right. So he is opening a Smackdown. He's wrestling LA Knight, and he took a base. When we talk about, they always go do a dive outside of the ring to go to commercial break. He does the coolest dive, which is a baseball slide. So he does a baseball slide face first. And it just looks so nasty every time he hits, because he's slow. It's not like he gets caught. He slides out and then he lands, and that's the style of the move.
It's the most natural looking of these. Let's have this high spot on the floor going to break thing. So it is how they went to commercial. But they set it up pretty well. Ray hit a 619, but LA Knight rolled to the apron rather than rolling into the center of the ring. So then Ray does first the feet first baseball slide to kick LA Knight from the apron out to the floor. And then once LA Knight's on the floor, positioned a little, a few yards, maybe a couple of yards away from the ring itself, Ray heads back to the opposite rope, springs off, and now he does the head first baseball slide, like you're saying, which becomes just a splash on the outside. And the timing was there. LA Knight was in perfect position. Ray hit it, and they went to commercial. And I like that better than, doing the dive over the ropes where, the opponent has to run under you and catch you.
And it looks like, wow, you just did like you just dived out of the ring and then they catch you.
I like this better. Anything else from the match stand out to you, or just in general that you wanted to talk about with these two guys?
I'm really glad LA Knight got the rub here, and he's going over. I think, our show, we're a Gunter show, we're a Bloodline show, and we're an LA Knight show.
We're becoming that, aren't we?
Yes. We are kind of becoming people that we really like in the show. Like sometimes we're just kind of like pulling for some of the guys, and LA Knight has been like, hello, the whole time. And he was trapped in all these different weird, segments and programs, and it's made them all work. And come out on the other side. I hope he wins some Money in the Bank. He probably would be my pick.
Yeah, the crowd is behind him, and they even acknowledge this on commentary.
Yeah.
Wade Barrett mentions how the crowd was behind LA Knight on Raw earlier this week, which they were. It was fantastic. I mean, they're with this guy. Now they're still having LA Knight do the cheap heel stuff, though. Like after this match is over, post-match, he goes to attack Rey Mysterio again. That brings out Santos Escobar for the save. LA Knight skips out of the ring quickly, so he's doing the chicken heel, so he's still doing just gratuitous heel stuff, even though the crowd is behind him. At some point, WWE's got to make a decision, I think, because the chicken heel stuff doesn't fit the Kavorka, the confident Captain Kavorka that the crowd is behind. Like it just doesn't fit.
He could do either one. I feel like with his personality, like he could be a face or a heel, because there's certain guys that are heels and then like they try to turn them face, and you're like, no, this guy's like pretty naturally unlikable. LA Knight, on the other hand, I think is unlikable and charismatic, and they're like, oh, go heel, because that's kind of like where your home base is. When you're a heel, you can do the more charismatic stuff. But yeah, I think it was a good match. But because this show is all about LA Knight, Gunther, and the Bloodline, so
I'm going to throw something out to you here. Was being paired with Bray Wyatt last year maybe the best thing that could have happened to LA Knight? Because even though LA Knight was supposed to be the heel in that program, the fact that he was more entertaining than Bray Wyatt kind of got people on his side. I think, as I try to remember back, I think that's when people started to get that little bit of cheer buzz when LA Knight would come out, because he would basically save these Bray Wyatt segments. In retrospect, that could have been a blessing in disguise for him, because it showed that like the crowd is just naturally behind the guy. He's naturally entertaining.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I
completely.
don't wish that Mountain Dew pitch black match on anyone. And all that nonsense with Uncle Howdy and the dive off the equipment onto the stage at the end and having to be dressed in fluorescent trunks. Like, I don't wish that on anybody. But the program overall, LA Knight's resiliency and the fact that he was entertaining, even though he was supposed to be kind of the B-level guy in that feud, I think that's why the crowd's behind him.
Yeah.
Because they're like, wait a minute, this guy is legitimately cool and good at what he's doing. We enjoy seeing him on our TV screens or in the arena.
I'll tell you what, it might be one of these things where, oh, we have a comment.
We do.
Let me talk to you. All right, I'll click show. And this is from a good friend of both of ours.
Uh-oh.
This is from Blue Francis. When are you guys going to do a push-up contest, chess game, or spicy chicken competition?
I think those have already been done as well as they can possibly be done by an indie promotion that we both are familiar with. I don't think us copying that just gold from NJCW would be a good idea. We could never do what Nasty Nick and Diamond Earl Scruggs were able to do.
We can't recreate it. Blue, great question. And Blue, a big shout out to you. Our most popular wrestling video on the channel was, essentially directed by you, or given that you gave us the idea when you said, "Hey, I like Andy Kaufman. Do a video about Andy Kaufman." So, a little.
We saved that one for the WrestleMania double live stream. And yeah, when Andy Kaufman went into the Hall of Fame this year, that was a good one. Yeah.
And
now we got an aw shucks. There you go. Blue, are you watching the WWE product? Have you gotten back into SmackDown at all? Maybe Raw, maybe NXT. Tell us that if you're watching us on the live stream now. Did you just stumble across us because we're a couple of great looking guys here on camera talking about SmackDown, or have you actually tried getting into WWE's modern product here? I'm surprised. We've been doing this for about 9 months, and John, you and I getting back into WWE's product, and I kind of like it.
Yeah, and Blue's telling us it doesn't have the channel. So, hey.
Well, then, Blue, let us fill you in on all the things you're missing. Close your eyes and just imagine that you are living SmackDown vicariously through the dulcet tones of John and myself.
All right. So moving on here, I saw, oh my God, Blue's sending a chat. So Blue, you're one of the first chats we've had. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We'll keep talking here. And
we've got 3 other matches here.
Let's talk about,
and also a talk show. So you tell me where you want to go next.
Well, the talk show is bad, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's focus on the more positive stuff here. I had said Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler versus Witch People because I didn't really know, I didn't really catch their names here.
Okay,
so.
Now the Witch People, that's WITCH, not like Witch People ? Like who did they fight? Yes, it's Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, the NXT Women's Tag Team Champions. This is a title unification match for both sets of belts. And it ties in. I'm going to spill the beans here. Something we were going to thinking about talking to Cheap Heat, but WWE has been trying to put some of the main roster stars onto NXT to kind of boost ratings there. And we flat out got a report this week. I think it was from I saw it on WrestleZone. They were quoting Dave Meltzer at Wrestling Observer newsletter that they're trying to boost NXT's ratings. So they're trying to send some of the main roster people to NXT. And this tag team consolidation match was a way to, now that the belts are all together, these champions are now going to show up on NXT sometimes. Who wins this match, John?
Yeah. So we have, is it Dawn and what's the other person?
It's Fire and Dawn here. Alba Fire and Isla Dawn.
Witch people. So the witch people here, they lose to Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey. That kind of makes sense because they could send Ronda Rousey down and they could send Shayna Baszler down, Shayna Baszler had a pretty good career in NXT, pre-NXT, what it is now. And they also have the name. If Ronda Rousey is still a name, I don't know. At least a washed-up name. But they have.
I think she's still got celebrity cachet, and because they keep booking her to be stronger than she deserves based on her pro wrestling ability, I think she's still a name. I think if Ronda and Shayna go to NXT, that's a boost for NXT, right?
Yeah, and
it's more of a boost than if Alba Fire and Isla Dawn show up there again after supposedly getting a promotion.
Yeah, so their reward for being the NXT Tag Team Champions after 1 week is getting sent back down to the minors. So it does make sense that they're sending. That would be weird. They're sending people to NXT, but are you like, man? Oh, awesome! Baron Corbin, Ronda Rousey. I gotta watch that show. I'm just
Seth Rollins and Ronda Rousey maybe are spiking some interest. I don't know. We're spurring some interest.
Oh, is Seth Rollins there?
Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker are supposed to have a little feud there.
Oh, wow.
So that's an impressive name. And yeah, I think because Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey have that name recognition, maybe they do spur some interest if they show up on NXT some week. Baron Corbin, no, because Baron Corbin's been booked as a chump,
and he is a chump.
So like a chump showing up in NXT, I don't know what that does for him. Like he's been booked weak.
Yeah, I didn't
realize Shayna and Ronda and Seth Rollins have been booked strong. So if they show up, maybe it is a big deal. I don't know. I don't watch NXT. If you're watching right now our live stream, if you watch NXT, does it pique your interest to have stars who are over on the main roster visiting NXT every now and then to mix it up with some of their top names there? Like let's instead of speculating, let's hear from somebody. If someone's out there and wants to chime in, let's hear from somebody who watches both brands and would like it. I don't want to like put words in any NXT fans' mouths.
So that's interesting stuff. I'm a big fan of consolidating titles in general because you can't have NXT Tag Team Women's Champions and then WWE Women's Tag Team Champions and then like take both of them too seriously. I think consolidation of titles and giving them a little bit of meaning. I was actually kind of surprised this wasn't on the main event as a result of that there was actually going to be a guaranteed title. You know, there's actually
somebody's going to lose the title.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we got one more comment from Blue. I'll just pop it up here.
Sure.
Some of your Don't Bury the Lead are on the Pro Cosmos page besides your page. Some highlights are there besides Andy Kaufman.
Okay, so the Professor Cosmo page is doing a little promotional work here for us. Well, thank you, Professor Cosmo, whoever you are.
Right. Whoever you are, thank you.
Professor Cosmo, Doc Lester sends his regards.
So, yeah, thanks, Blue. Appreciate it. We have one person watching on Twitch. you can jump on in and let us know if you've watched anything about NXT or any of the SmackDown stuff or AEW stuff. We're kind of got some traction here with people watching live. So moving
Post
on.
match, what happens here? Is it a big enough deal to you? What happens post match here with Shayna and Ronda?
Oh,
Raquel Rodriguez was sitting ringside for this match, and as she doesn't interfere at all, doesn't interfere post match. She's just walking to the back when Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey kind of call out to her, and so she stops and like, "What are you doing out here?" And Raquel says she's there to scout, and she starts using "we," not "I," "we," as in the titles we never lost. And they're like, "Well, what does that mean?" And hey, Liv Morgan's music hits. Liv Morgan is back. I don't know what injury she had. They kind of kept it quiet. I don't know if it was legit or if they just had her off of TV for storyline purposes. I would assume that Liv Morgan's a popular enough person that you wouldn't just kick her off TV on a ruse. I'm guessing she probably was legitimately hurt, but I mean they don't have to give us details if they don't want to. Apparently, she's cleared to wrestle again because she came out here to stand by Raquel's side, and they had a little face off in the ring with the new consolidated champs there. Maybe down the road we get the Raquel and Liv never lost the belts.
I'll tell you what. This is one of those things where they actually have something going with the tag team titles now.
Yeah.
And I was surprised to see Liv come back so quickly because I thought she'd have a very serious injury. I don't know if she's trying to like gut it out and maybe she's going to come out a couple times and just make sure that they're solidified enough. But just a month off from an injury is pretty impressive that she's able to kind of rehab and get back from it.
Yeah. Did you get any details on what it was? Because, is a month too short of a time to recover fully?
Who knows? I mean, maybe she wanted a month off or they were like, maybe if you can remember before she got injured, she was really she was really working a lot. She was working a lot on SmackDown. She was doing a lot of hardcore matches, which, she did a hardcore match with Ronda Rousey. She was like the top person in the Royal Rumble. She was in Battleground too.
That Elimination Chamber thing, yeah.
I call it Battleground.
Put over Rhea Ripley in a really good looking match on SmackDown that we saw. Maybe it was like a shoulder or a collarbone thing, maybe broken collarbone or something, because it was something that during the match she started reaching for a shoulder. So maybe it was that kind of thing, and maybe it does. If it was that she popped the shoulder, maybe she could rehab that in a month. I don't know, but good to see her there. She returns at the right time because if you're going to play it up that, there's new consolidated champs and they're a heel faction, a heel team. They're bullies. They're putting everybody out and injuring them. Good timing to have your babyface team that was clicking pretty well reformed here.
For sure. And I think it's pretty cool. And I think, it's good to have that team back together. That'll have it be another tag team. I like Raquel Rodriguez. Liv Morgan is one of your girls that you've been pretty high on, and I agree. She's been pretty solid.
As long as they don't make her too vanilla.
Right. And, we're going to move on here ourselves and just go ahead and we'll move on to the next segment I wanted to talk about. And this was a lot better SmackDown than last week. They had some good matches. Now that I'm going through the notes, I actually kind of like the SmackDown with the three matches.
I do too.
The three matches we had. But, they all can't be winners. And
there's 2 more matches.
But there's one more segment I guess there's one segment that kind of stuck out to me, unfortunately, is Grayson Waller had Pretty Deadly on.
Yes.
And so you have Grayson Waller, kind of a new intro for his TV show, and then Pretty Deadly. So all new faces that we haven't seen a lot of in the last couple of months. So all new guys What did you think of the talking segment of this talk show with Grayson Waller?
This is the first Grayson Waller effect that I actually enjoyed.
Yeah.
And I will tell you maybe because these guys know each other from NXT, it seemed to me that they had some real chemistry. Not
Yeah.
only Pretty Deadly, who I'm impressed with the more I see of them, but them with Grayson Waller. Like they're all heels. Their timing was good. The smarminess was there. There was some of that inside joke thing that they're letting you in on. Where he would Grayson Waller would act like he was, really subdued about something, but then just come out and praise them effusively, and of course Pretty Deadly would respond, oh yes, yes, so their timing was there, their personalities meshed well. Um, this was good smarmy heel stuff. This was so much better than him trying to just get under AJ Styles' skin. This was better than him trying to just gush over Charlotte Flair. This was a good Grayson Waller effect, and it actually mattered because it led into the tag team match that followed this. Pretty Deadly's up there just lying about their gauntlet match. Just lying about the fact that they basically beat one team that had been in there for 20 minutes. They're like, we beat 5 other teams, and they're going through the names of everybody they meet. And then finally they mention the Street Profits, and that brings out Angelo Dawkins and Montez Ford.
You know,
And so I thought this was a good setup
I
for the
think
match, and I thought it worked. I mean, do I want to see the Grayson Waller effect every week? No. That's a hard no from me. But this is why you would do it.
okay. So Grayson Waller is getting thrown into the deep end
He
without
is.
swimmies, without a paddle. He's getting thrown really deep into the deep end, and this might have been when he's struggling for air. He gets up and gets a little gasp of air, and he's going to go back down. He's not doing great. This wasn't anything too compelling. It was a little bit more. This is more watchable than it's been the last 2 weeks. When you're like, this guy probably is done. Like he's dead
Went over
before.
pretty deadly because that's usually the purpose of these talk shows. Is not only your host, but it's supposed to benefit the person over there. I don't think AJ Styles benefited from being on the show. I don't think Charlotte Flair benefited from being on the show. I think Pretty Deadly benefited from being out in this segment here. What did you think of Pretty Deadly in this segment? Did you think it helped them?
They were okay.
Okay.
For heels, they're okay. I think that when the crowd was chanting "shut up" to them, they could have done a lot better with some sort of improvisation. They just let the crowd say "shut up." They let them say "shut up," but they didn't go back and say any sort of witty line, which is why you're a heel. Like you're a heel
Sure.
who talk to the live crowd and get some cheap heat. So the crowd's giving it to them, shut up. And they just stop and then they go back. And then they go back to whatever their long-winded spiel was.
Well,
But
John, that wasn't in the script.
that wasn't in the script. I know. That's the problem. It's like, oh, shut up. There's, I don't know, ChatGPT right now. What lines can you say to a crowd when they're saying shut up to you? That could be good. Like, go ahead and say, I'm the one with the mic. You're the one in your parents' basement. You're the one in Pittsburgh, or you're the one in New Orleans, wherever you're at.
Sure.
You people have no respect for people like me. This is the South. You're trash. Anything. I'm just saying lines. I'm just making them up. Just say,
Sure.
have some interaction with the crowd when they're trying to chant. Shut up. It's like,
Maybe because the bar had been set so low for poor Grayson Waller and what they're having him do. Like the fact that this one came off as decent to me, decently good, just made it a plus in my book. And then it led into a match. Like it wasn't a throwaway segment. It led to a match in this episode, in fact, like 10 seconds later. Street Profits versus Pretty Deadly, bell at 9:10. pinfall at 9:19. They gave the guys almost 10 minutes to work in the ring. Not bad. What did you think of what you saw from the match once these guys got into the ring?
I can't believe I wrote this down, but
Okay.
I'm gonna just say what I wrote down.
Okay.
Prince
Pretty
Pretty
deadly wins.
Prince
Let's not.
Prince Pretty can work. Prince
Prince can work. Okay.
Prince Pretty is not only okay, he's good in the ring.
Yeah.
All his spots were solid. Every time he would jump extra high and sell like a maniac every time. And it was like, wow. And a lot of all the moves he was taking, it was really impressive. And I just can't get out of my mind. I'm trying to, and at some point they removed whatever was on his shoulders, whatever that weird thing is.
Yes,
And
that weird little that extreme crop top that each of them wear.
once
That Wilson and Prince wear.
I was like, wow, he's like a real wrestler. That's pretty good. And I can see now it's all kind of coming together. It's like this guy probably was working forever in the indies, in the UK scene, was good, got to the US, and they gave him this ridiculous gimmick, and he's good in the ring.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like undeniable. So
I think they're both well put together as athletes. Wilson and Prince, but both of the pretty deadly
Prince is
guys.
huge. He's
Prince is a little taller.
Yeah. You know, he could have easily been a guy that comes in and you would take a little bit more serious, and he's just strapped with this bizarre gimmick. And I guess they're kind of getting it over because they at least used the gimmick to pin him. And I kind of get why they're pushing him. I think that you know, they gave their boy or some guy Grayson that they actually made the show a little bit more listenable. I don't think they're right there yet on the mic. I think that they're a little lost still. And this might be a result of the fact that they're at a big show. They're on Smackdown. They're not in NXT in front of 100 people and 400 producers probably in the back and a bunch of fake things in the background. You know, like that's like, yeah, no, if you get over NXT, like, who cares? It's, you know, that's one of those who cares if you get over there. But
it shows your potential though, and the fact that these guys, you must have impressed somebody in NXT to get the call.
Yeah. So
same thing with the women's tag team.
I think they did it. I mean, so just kind of to circle back here though, I think it was a good match, and I think that they did a good job. And I'm shocked how good Prince Pretty can work.
Elton Prince and Kit Wilson, yes.
I did also want to mention another thing here. Dawkins did really good with the hot tag. So when he got the hot tag and he hopped in, he was like a million miles an hour and he was like freaking out. And I was like, that's what the baby face is supposed to do with the hot tag. Like freak out, do all the stuff, start diving, slamming people, start screaming like a maniac. That's good. Like, I don't know. I like that style with the hot tag. When you freak out, when you get tugging and you're the baby face, people will start to like, it brings the match up to another level. And then
that's the idea of the hot tag, right? Like, you know, the other guy's been trying to get the tag, but he can't do it. Like the other team just keeps preventing him. So when the guy finally gets tagged in, he's amped up. Like he's been trying to get that tag for a couple of minutes now. I'm like, oh, he's so close but can't. Oh, he's so close but he can't. Yes, now it's there. And he's like a million miles an hour, the adrenaline, everything. Yes, it's exactly what you're supposed. That's why it's called a hot tag rather than just a regular tag. Yes, Angelo Dawkins plays it like it's a hot tag.
Yeah.
Perfect analysis. He does it. Yes, you nailed it. Kudos to Dawkins, who oftentimes gets overshadowed by Montez Ford in this group.
Yeah, Montez Ford.
He did it. Dawkins did a good job tonight.
Yeah, Montez Ford and, you know, Dawkins, they lose tonight. So our number one pick in SmackDown, they lose again. So they've been jobbed out. They're losing left and right. What's up with the Street Profits, Dom?
I don't know. I didn't see enough of them on Raw to say whether or not maybe they were a little over their skis when they were getting pushed on Raw, and this is where they should be, or if they were where they should have been on Raw, and now it's a little bit of a head scratcher. Because
Yeah.
it's not as if the SmackDown tag division is gangbusters.
No. No. You don't have Legion of Doom. You don't have a bunch of legends in like the tag team division at the moment. It's kind of weak.
It's the B team of the LWO. It's not Santos and Ray. It's the B team. I mean, they can work, but they're the B team.
Yeah.
It's the OC, which are the B. It's Anderson and Gallows, who are the B team of the OC.
Right.
It's Sheamus and Butch, or Butch and Ridge, or Ridge and Sheamus, whichever two of that 3-man faction wants to get in there. So there's not a lot of great tag team wrestling on SmackDown, at the moment. It's the Street Profits, it's Pretty Deadly, it's, I don't know, like who else are we missing here? The Viking Raiders are on Raw now, and they weren't great anyway. Hit Row is still around. They're not great. They're comedy jobbers at this point. So it's not like the tag team division on SmackDown is so great that,
Wait. Take that back. Hit Row. One day, Top Dollar is going to have a hot tag and pin and do a bunch of goofy slams and pin someone, and the crowd's going to go crazy. Top Dollar. He is a guy that I look forward to every time. And I'm like, oh yeah, Hit Row's out here. Let's see some Top Dollar. Let's see what's going to happen. So,
okay.
not for reasons, where I'm like, man, Top Dollar is a great worker. I just want to see what's going to happen.
In the same way that we all like to see the two-headed man at the circus.
Right. Yeah, I'll pay $5 to go in that tent to go see what that is.
Yes. With apologies to any two-headed people who may be watching us right now on Facebook, Twitch, or YouTube.
Is Don't Bury the Lead canceled for talking about two-headed men?
At the circus?
At the circus? They went too far.
It was a thing. We didn't invent it. We don't like gawking at people, except we kind of watch pro wrestling, which is basically designed around gawking at people. So, hey, the art form is what it is.
You're right. It is a circus. Tom, anything else to talk about with this specific match? Pretty Deadly versus the Street Profits?
Other than I like how Pretty Deadly works together. They're a tag team.
Oh, yeah.
Like, however much time they've spent putting in their dues in, NXT UK, maybe they were on that for a while. NXT here over in the States, the main NXT, if they've been on the indies. They look like a tag team. They're in sync with each other on the mic and in the ring. They clearly have a chemistry. They have a look. They have a gimmick. And even though it's kind of over the top, I think at the end of the day, it does not overshadow the fact that both of them can work in the ring, especially you're talking about Elton Prince. I mean, these guys can work. These guys aren't lousy wrestlers who are being carried by a gimmick.
Yeah.
They're guys who have an over-the-top gimmick, but they can wrestle.
It's pretty wild. I cannot believe with the way they looked, and when I first saw them, I thought, oh no, they're doing this again. But hey, kudos to them for, maybe it's likened to like Gold Dust, where that gimmick was so weird and goofy, but Rhodes could work.
Dustin Rhodes
could work, and that actually helped a lot. And then he added elements where he like toned it down a little bit and made it somewhere middle of the road. And you're like, actually, this is good. Gold Dust is good. So maybe it's something like Gold Dust.
Yeah, it works. I'm glad to see it. I'm glad they're getting a shot, and I'm glad they're not dropping the ball. I don't like to see anybody fail on the program, because I'm watching the program and then it just sucks for me. Speaking of sucking on the program, we had one more match here.
Do
you remember it?
Oh,
It
is
was
this?
like 2 to 3 minutes, so you may have blinked. Were you refilling the beverage, hitting the can?
No, I was.
Charlotte Flair beats Lacey Evans in about 2 minutes with the figure eight. It was not a total squash because Lacey got some of her offense in, but Charlotte's really in control most of the time, and she's mocking Lacey. Like Lacey's supposed to be the heel, and Charlotte is doing like she's mocking Lacey's gimmick. She's mocking the salute, uh, both verbally and copying some of Lacey's movements. She finally wins with the figure eight, and post match, after Lacey rolls out of the ring and, gingerly walks her way back up the ramp, Asuka attacks from the crowd, jumps Charlotte, beats her down, and then Asuka does the mocking salute to Charlotte. So we had Asuka mocking Charlotte, mocking Lacey. You lost me. There's one too many degrees of Kevin Bacon in there for me. Like,
Um,
how is it getting over Asuka versus Charlotte to have Asuka mock Charlotte mocking Lacey? So Asuka's mocking Lacey through Charlotte? They could have done. I could have done without that one.
I watched this match with Baby John, and I think Baby John was very irritated at the time. So I'm
Okay.
tossing, so I'm putting him up and down and up and trying to figure it out. And I looked up and saw what the match was, and I thought, yeah, I'm not missing much. Okay.
No.
So I'm not pressing pause to see what's going to happen here. I saw the finish was the figure eight, which always looks cool.
Yep.
Lacey Evans was a project that came in years ago, and she's in the military, or she was in the military, so and they thought like big things of her, and she just was trash since then. So I don't think that she is a little bit like the female Baron Corbin, where I used to watch them.
Oh no.
Yeah, I used to watch them, and they got pushed too far. And then, like, I was like, well, I'm gonna watch New Japan because I'm like done watching this. And then I was like, oh, Jericho's New Japan. Let me see what this is. And I'm watching like indie YouTube clips, indie wrestling, and I'm watching like New Japan. All the week gets made, and I just tuned off of WWE. So these are the people that they're quite literally the channel changers. You're like, oh yeah, let me watch some other form of wrestling because this can't be it.
Okay.
So that's kind of a poor late. I mean, I shouldn't say poor Lacey Evans, poor me. She's been employed for 8 years, doing this 7 years, just being a bum. So
She's got a good look to her. It looks like she can work in the ring, but
she's got a
I don't know. Maybe it's just not the right time for her to get a real strong looking push.
she has a very good look, but the other thing that's a little goofy too is like the military heel doing like the Sergeant Slaughter turn, but like the Sergeant Slaughter turn worked because he was Sergeant Slaughter and he was pretty over at some point, and then he turned heel and he's like teaming with Iron Sheik, right? Like that kind of worked a little bit more than now. It's like this babyface military first person turns heel military person. It's like, I don't know. Anyways, let's not harp too much on it. Let's not.
I think Baby John had the right assessment of this match.
Baby John, yeah, he fussed and said, feed me some more food and burp me because I'm done.
That's all this match is worth here.
Anything else from SmackDown stick out to you, Dom?
They teased that Bianca Belair will be barred from ringside during the Asuka Charlotte Flair title match at Money in the Bank. So they're keeping alive this thing that Bianca Belair is somehow involved in what's happening here in their business. I think Bianca's been playing this pretty well, like character-wise, because there is some sympathy on her character. She is kind of getting screwed. She kind of got screwed out of the title.
Oh, she did.
She kind of got screwed out of her rematch. Now someone is jumping the line on her. So I think Bianca Belair's been doing well. I mean, to not be involved in the title match but to still have your name in that upper echelon somehow, I think this is pretty good. I mean, it also tells you more about we don't know who's heel and who's face in this big trio that's kind of running the women's singles division on SmackDown. Who's the baby face here, who's the heel, especially after this match here. I mean, Charlotte was doing heel stuff, like really mocking, bullying heel stuff.
Yeah.
Asuka was, doing a jump someone from behind thing, but she's all colorful and vibrant, and she stands out and she draws people's attention. And then there's Bianca, who's supposed to be mad and teasing that she's going to disrupt something, but on the other hand, you kind of have some sympathy for her. So that I think there's a good dynamic going with the three women who have sort of sucked themselves apart from the rest of the SmackDown roster here.
Yeah.
Is this a good role for Adam Pearce? Do you like him in this role?
The super straight guy. Somebody's got to do it, right? And he's okay at it.
He's a 5-time NWA champion, Adam Pearce.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know anything about Adam Pearce. I thought he was
5-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion. This guy could wrestle.
Really?
And he's on WWE as just kind of a suit.
A suit and
he's not that old. He can still go.
He's almost like, not only is he, a suit, but he's also like submissive. He's like, oh, let me try to figure this out for you. Let me, he's getting like pushed around by all the people.
So yeah, he's trying to be like his character now and not have you remember, wait a minute, this guy could probably kick almost everyone's ass who's coming up and yelling at him.
Right.
No,
I kind of like him. Or at least he plays his role pretty well as a guy that gets shoved around, and he's like the wrestler.
He's the tweener. He's got to be an authority figure, but at the same time, he can't make the wrestlers look weak.
Yeah.
By the way, happy birthday, Adam Pearce. He turns 45 today, June 24th.
Look at that. We're getting some Adam Pearce knowledge. I did not know this guy.
Adam Pearce, he can still go. He looks like he's still in great shape. He had a distinguished pro wrestling career. So maybe that gives him a little more cachet as the authority figure. Like the wrestlers kind of begrudgingly respect Adam Pearce because, he's one of the boys. And he wasn't some jobber. Like, he was good at this.
Interesting. Wow. NWA champion in 2012. I did not know that.
Yep.
Well,
5-time NWA champion.
I'll tell you what. We're about an hour and 2 minutes into the show here. We have one person on Twitch that's watching, and then a couple other people on Facebook and YouTube. Go ahead, send us some chats. We're getting into the cheap heat here, so if you have anything to say, let us know.
Cheap heat is like the wild card here, so throw us a cheap heat if you got them. Something you saw from the world of major pro wrestling in the last week or so that you want us to talk about. We've got a couple of things still on our blotter here. One we've kind of segued into here, talking about Adam Pearce and his age. He can still go at age 45. LA Knight. He's 40, and he was talking about in that same Daily Mail interview that Wade Barrett referenced during their match. He spoke about coming onto the main roster in WWE about a year ago as Max Dupree, a manager, because at age 39 at the time, he was considered too old. Too old. I mean, if you're in shape and you can go, you're not too old at 39. You're not too old at 40. You're not too old at 45. Guys who know how to keep themselves in shape, especially nowadays with modern nutrition and with the road schedule not being what it was 30 years ago.
Tom Brady won a Super Bowl at 45. And that's a legitimate, that's as hard as it gets for a quarterback. Yeah. That's as hard as it gets from a physical competition. And he doesn't look like, wow.
Nobody in NFL creative was scripting the Tom Brady win. He wasn't supposed to go over in the Super Bowl.
Right. Yeah, right. You're right. Oh my God. Let's face it. Tom
I said they
Brady.
should have turned Tom Brady heel years ago.
Oh, he was John Cena, where
Yeah.
he was always a little bit heel, but not officially heel. He never
Yes.
turned. He never did the full turn like Aaron Rodgers, where he got the long hair. He started doing weird drugs in the woods, and he went.
Changing his look and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, so Aaron Rodgers went full heel. Tom Brady did the John Cena thing where he should have turned heel, but he didn't. But people were doing, Brady sucks. Let's go, Brady.
I think he turned heel after the Super Bowl where they came back against Atlanta when he was on the Patriots. I think that was his heel turn. I think at that point he was a heel. And surprisingly enough, when he goes to the Bucks later on, it's like a face turn.
Yes.
It's like he comes back and now he's a face.
Okay, I digress. That was a face turn for sure when he went to win the Super Bowl. But I think when he started to go for it again, when he's trying to get like a second ring with the Bucks,
when he came back after winning with the Bucks, like if he just ran off into the sunset like that, yeah,
he was pure baby face. But then when he kept trying to go for it a little too long, and then you're like, well, Tampa Bay can't have 2 Super Bowls. Like, you can't have this middle of the road, bottom of the road cities, like from a population and market standpoint, win back-to-back Super Bowls. Like, you can't have that be the city.
They're not going to put him over twice.
So he didn't get booked to go over. Yeah. No. That wasn't even part of the cheap heat, but I love it, Tom. We improv pretty well there. Yes. What were we talking about?
We were talking about LA Knight being told he's too old at age 39. And the way he talks about it, it was right around the same time that Vince McMahon had to take his leave of absence there. And Triple H stepped up to take control of WWE creative, kind of without somebody smacking down his ideas. No pun intended with the Smackdown there. That LA Knight gets a chance to get out there and wrestle. The Triple H mini takeover there that wound up lasting only a few months was responsible for getting Sami Zayn into the Bloodline and giving LA Knight a shot to be a wrestler and not a you're too old at age 39 manager of a comedy duo.
Yeah.
So what a tremendous job of saving the product Triple H did in just a few months, just for those 2 things alone. The fact that you gave us Sami Zayn in the Bloodline and you gave us LA Knight as an on-screen wrestler.
It's crazy to think that they had that.
Why do we watch SmackDown, John? For the Bloodline and for LA Knight
and Gunther.
Now that they took Gunther to Raw, we're done. It's Bloodline and LA Knight. Thank you, Triple H, last summer when Vinnie Mac had his little leave.
If the Bloodline went away and LA Knight went away, this would be brutal. And we would keep doing the show, but it would be like, man, we were complaining sometimes about LA Knight and Bloodline, and I don't even know why we complained. Like it would be brutal without these guys. So yeah, he's one of our dudes, and it's crazy to think that he's been under the radar for as long as he has. But I do remember seeing some promos with him in NWA. I saw an interesting photo of him. It was him and Jon Moxley playing Rock Band. And they're like in their mid-20s. And they're like roommates sitting around playing Rock Band. Like a video game together. And it's like, whoa. These two have been, he's been in the business for this long. Where Jon Moxley wasn't even Dean Ambrose yet. He was still in the indies as Jon Moxley in South Jersey at CCW, So.
And years later, when WWE needed somebody for an embarrassing series of video game vignettes spanning multiple episodes of SmackDown, LA Knight, he's got video game experience.
Right.
What a perfect guy to just throw in there with Xavier Woods and Madcap Moss to get buried.
Yes. Oh my God. And he almost got buried, but he's out of that. So, speaking of what kind of beverages I was drinking today when I was watching um, SmackDown with Baby John, we're going to talk a little bit about Jeff Hardy, who is pretty notorious for his beverage consumption. And Jeff Hardy here can't go to Canada. So AEW has to write him out of the script as they do their Canadian tour. We talked about this before with Jimmy and Jay Uso, how it might be a concern that they couldn't get in. I wonder what Jeff Hardy has done out that has either been buried or not been out in the public. And I don't want to trash him too much, but it's pretty wild that his behaviors in the past, he can't even go to Canada.
Well, apparently, the DUI arrest that flagged his travel plans here was from 2022. So it may be just a case that the Usos' troubles were far enough behind them that they, paid their debt to society or whatever. And maybe, WWE has a little more pull than Tony Khan does at this point with AEW, and they were able to get the Uso brothers to Elimination Chamber in Montreal a few months ago. But for whatever reason, Jeff Hardy, maybe it's too soon. But yeah, the reports are that he can't be at AEW's programming. They're doing a mini tour of Canada, like you said.
Yeah, I think
you watch AEW more than I do. Is this a big blow to them not to have AEW, not to have Jeff Hardy or maybe even both Hardy brothers in the next few weeks worth of TV programming?
It'll give him a chance to cool off. I can remember when he was in Vegas for one show and Jeff was doing some stuff that was a little suspect. And it's just a little bit like when it's tough to kind of trust him at this point because he was kind of stumbling around in the ring and you're like, okay, here we go again. And it's like, oh no, I'm not messed up. It's like, but you're constantly messed up. And then he got a DUI after that. He had a DUI at 9 a.m. in the morning, which is like wild. So he can't even control it enough to a point where, he can't call an Uber. And I've seen some arguments online like, yeah, well, the Uber might add him for being intoxicated. It's like, yeah, that's not a reason to not call an Uber if Jeff Hardy were to get an Uber, nobody would be like, oh man, why'd you get an Uber? You were intoxicated. It's like, no, that's a pretty reasonable decision. So
honestly, if Jeff Hardy got outed by an Uber or Lyft or taxi cab driver or whatever for being intoxicated, everybody would cheer for him. They'd be like, dude, good call. That's exactly what that stuff is for. They probably, and unless the person outing him was also taking that tack, that person would be buried.
Right. Yeah.
Like, imagine if one of these, ride sharing people tried to, rag on Jeff Hardy for calling for a car service. Like they would be all over that car service person. Like, what's wrong with you? Don't you know that's what your service is for?
Mm-hmm. And you have situations or I think it's almost like it's kind of tapered down a little bit, but you have situations in pro wrestling where it just seems like a lot of guys, they die in hotel rooms. They do some really messed up stuff. They lead this life of like pretty bad substance abuse. Tammy Sitch, who is Sunny, she crashed into someone while intoxicated recently and killed them. And she's had this and she just got out of jail, so she has this laundry list of issues. So it's like sometimes, you have to kind of step back a little bit, and you're like, you could say something like, "Oh man, well Jeff Hardy doesn't want to get popped for getting an Uber," but then like Tammy Sitch killed someone, so maybe you don't want to do that.
Yeah. I mean, take care of yourself. Take care of the people that you might injure or kill if you do something really stupid. Yeah.
So we got some cheap heat here with Jeff Hardy. Anything else you wanted to talk about in the cheap heat segment?
AEW is got a third show now, the way WWE has their third show with NXT. They've got Collision. It airs on Saturdays. Have you seen any of this Collision before? And do you think there's enough? Do you think there's enough room for a second major promotion to have 3 weekly shows? So between WWE and AEW, we now have 6 weekly episodic television shows. Now, one of them is it Rampage that's on Friday for AEW? Is that just a 1-hour deal?
Rampage was a really good idea initially, and so I'll speak on behalf of the AEW stuff.
There you go.
Rampage I thought was a really good idea initially because it was a 1-hour show. So from 8 to 10, you'd have Smackdown, and then 10 to 11, you'd have Rampage. And they were doing these shows live, and the crowds were crazy because it's a 10 p.m. start time on Friday night. So they were like, they were all Jeff Hardy'd up. They're like, yeah, they're ready to go. So Rampage was initially pretty cool, but then they just used so I've been to AEW Dynamite a bunch. And then Rampage was the 3rd hour from 10 to 11. And they had to switch all the stuff out and put all the Rampage stuff on. By the time it starts, it's usually 10:15. So it's like 10:15 to 11:15 on a Wednesday night. So the crowd's kind of filtering out. Tony would come out and be like, please stay. And then you'd stay for like a match or two and you'd leave. And then they would put that pre-recorded show on TV. So because it was pre-recorded, it wasn't good. Okay. Collision, on the other hand, it just felt like an extra hour of Dynamite. Collision, on the other hand, feels like a different show. I liked it a lot when I watched it last week. I know the opening segments and some of the stuff we have on our channel right now has been kind of controversial with CM Punk. He's kind of pushing the buttons here with
he's back. He's back. Like CM Punk is back. So, this is part of the CM Punk deal. Do you like CM Punk being back? Do you think that Collision could have done what it did without the lore of, hey, CM Punk is back?
Well, all the wrestling around him was good. So Collision is a little bit more old school. And I would just say this about AEW Collision. This is what Jim Cornette wanted. So he can't really trash it too much. These are all these matches are like what Jim Cornette said to do in his shows. So that's why you're not hearing a lot from the Cornette camp, because it's pretty damn good. And in addition to that, like, I listened to their full review. If the show's good and he likes it, it doesn't get nearly as much views, So just where he's positioned himself. But anyways, I think Collision's good. Not Jim Cornette aside. I think
1 hour or 2 hours for Collision.
It's a 2-hour show, 8 to 10 p.m. Saturday night. It's on right now, but don't bury the lead. So don't tune off of this. But
you can tape them.
Right.
Stay right here with the good stuff.
AEW.
So this now means that AEW is doing 2 hours with Dynamite, and kind of their 3rd hour of Dynamite is Rampage. That's kind of like the equivalent of your 3-hour Raw on Monday. And
exactly.
So now the 2-hour Collision is kind of like what SmackDown is.
It's a different feeling show. Kind of SmackDown.
Are they splitting the wrestlers at all? Like trying to split the brands, like split the roster, like WWE tries to do with most of the roster, having some guys just work Raw and other guys just work SmackDown? Are you seeing that yet with AEW, or is it too early where they just want to get all the biggest stars on both shows to promo them?
Yeah, I definitely get that impression. It's none of the guys. It doesn't have the Young Bucks. It doesn't have Kenny Omega. It doesn't have.
Those are the biggest stars on the Dynamite side, right?
Yeah, those are the I don't know if you call them stars, or the EVPs. It didn't have Moxley, but it had some guys that have been kind of underutilized that are big hosses wrestling. Okay. And they've done a lot of stuff on Dynamite, but they're kind of like WCW in the 90s, where they have this ridiculously huge roster, and then they have a lot of people that can go. But the roster's almost too big, so you can't fit them all in. But you've got people on Wednesday and you got people on Saturday. I don't know if they're going to intermingle them too much, but hopefully, it could be like a brand split, but they have so many people that I like the style of Collision just being big hosses and good wrestling. and then Dynamite you can have your more gymnastic stuff. That seems to be the direction they're headed.
Okay, interesting stuff. I'll keep kind of an eye on it outside because it's still on Turner, and you can't watch Turner unless you have a TV subscription. And I'm a cord cutter, don't have TV service, so I just hear things about it and read things about it and watch whatever clips they'll throw out online.
Yeah. Well, Dom, I'll tell you what, man. We're heading toward the end here, and I did want to mention a couple things before we hop off here.
Sure.
The channel's been on en fuego the last week. We have a video with CM Punk shooting a promo. Got some permission from someone on Twitter to use a video. That's gotten some traction. And then who would win in a real fight?
Yes.
That's 60 views in 3 days. That's been a project we've been working on. We're going to have a couple videos coming from that. We have some shorts that are starting to pick up traction. So we are well on the way to what I said our goal should be is 100 subscribers in the year 2023. We have 77.
Wow.
We just need 23 more. If you're watching, go ahead. It's free. Click subscribe. Yeah, so that's it. Thanks so much for joining, Dom. Anything else from you?
This was definitely a better SmackDown than the previous week. I like this show. If we get more shows like this, I will be more pleasant when we do Don't Bury the Lead recaps.
Yeah, I think this was a really good SmackDown too. I was pleasantly surprised, if you will, after last week. I was like, oh no. I was like, are we going to start doing the Vince stuff again? But good wrestling and a good show. So, Dom.
1 week away from London. They're going to London for SmackDown and the Money in the Bank pay-per-view the next weekend.
And I'll tell you what, in the studio at the end here, we'll talk about when we're going to do the show. I still have to figure that one out. So thanks so much for joining, everyone. We appreciate it. We got one person that's been hanging in there the whole time on Twitch. If you have any comments, go ahead and do it, or you can come and follow us too. That's appreciated. We have some folks on Facebook. Blue Francis, appreciate the comments. And thanks so much for joining, and have a great rest of your evening.